sweats.
Good evening. We have a special meeting tonight that discusses the fire assessment. Welcome, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Would like to go ahead and open the meeting, and we'll turn it over to Daniel, our fire chief, and let him handle the presentation.
All right, thank you, sir. Like we talked about before, we hired a company to come in and look at implementing a fire assessment. Tonight we have a presentation from Ms. Sandy Walker. She did the presentation, and I'll introduce her now. She can come up here and go over it.
Can you see that one for me? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Sandy Walker with Government Services Group. GSG was hired by the city in early October, late September to develop a fire assessment program. And we've been working with staff and doing the analysis, and so today we're here to give you what our analysis what we have come up with. So basically, I want to go over what a fire assessment is and the legal parameters for it to be a valid special assessment. It's basically just a charge imposed against real property to pay for fire services. The courts have said that you can charge anything, it has to benefit property. So you can charge anything that's for fire protection services up to the level of first responder. Anything over the level of first responder, basic life support or advanced life support, cannot be funded with a fire assessment. Yes?
Can you define real property?
It's ground. It's not tangible property like tractors and things like that. It's land and buildings.
Okay.
So you can charge, since you cannot charge EMS, the EMS component. Your fire station does not provide an EMS component right now. You're predominantly volunteer, and so you don't have that BLS, ALS certificate. Although you do first responder and they're the first ones on the scene, but EMS has to come in afterwards. So what that tells us in the court's eyes, it says that all of your budget can be funded from a fire assessment. That's really the key to that. So again, the case law requirements are that to be a valid special assessment, it has to benefit property, and that's why fire protection services do benefit property. Keeping somebody's house from burning to the ground does benefit property. EMS, they say, does not benefit property because while it's important to the person living there, saving their life, it has a value to the residents. It doesn't necessarily make that house more valuable. And then it has to be fairly and reasonably apportioned, and that's where we come in. We look at logically and reasonably what's a fair way to apportion the cost, to distribute the cost to all benefited parcels. So the methodology that we used is the tried and true methodology. It's been court tested and approved. We call it the historical demand methodology. And the reason we call it the historical demand methodology is because we look at your calls and we look at the history of your calls and what category, what type of demand your residential versus your non-residential is putting on your fire department. And based on the demand that the properties are putting on your fire department, that's how we attribute the calls. And so it's based on your initial response, so it treats all calls equally. And there is one rate for single family. Everybody pays like based on a per dwelling unit basis. This methodology was reviewed by the courts in 2010 and upheld by the 4th District Court of Appeal in the Desiderio versus Boynton Beach case, and GSG was the expert witnesses. We developed that program, and we defended that program successfully.
Can we ask questions?
Sure. I mean, that's you guys. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Is it only for structures?
Yes.
I mean, the fee
We are recommending that you don't charge vacant land, and the reason why is in a city situation, if the fire department goes out to put out a fire on vacant land, is predominantly to protect the structures surrounding it and not necessarily to benefit that property. So we are recommending that at this time you don't charge vacant land.
Are you saying nobody ever charges vacant?
No, there are some people that do charge vacant land, but we're saying in your city situation, we are recommending that you charge structures.
The Division of Forestry is responsible in Florida for putting out vacant land fires. We help them as all fire departments work together, so it's not typically a fire department's responsibility to take care of vacant land. We wouldn't go put out a massive fire on Tyndall, we would wait for Division of Forestry, or even the wooded area there, as long as it wasn't threatening a house, and that's why you don't charge, because that's usually not our job, like you said, we're there for structure protection. And so there's some misconception. We work with them like they work with us, but, we don't go out and fight these giant woods fires like we see out in California. That's not our job in Florida. We have a division that does that.
Where's the closest forestry place here?
There's quite a few around. I think there's one somewhere near Weewalt, and then there's a few in Panama City. They usually respond pretty quickly, but to put out a woods fire, you don't put water on it. They cut a line with a tractor. So that's why structural fire departments don't usually get in the business of doing that. Unless it's a small grass fire or something simple, obviously.
And then again, that is to protect the structures around it, so like if it's in a residential vacant lot situation.
Question. Reasoning for one size fits all, the rate for single family regardless of size, 800 square foot versus 3,000 square feet?
Yeah, because if you get the single family house response, you don't send a half a response. So the fact that they have to respond to a call, they're getting the same response. So yes, it is reasonable. It's not, now remember, it's the value of the service that you're receiving. It's not the value of your property. And that's the difference between a special assessment versus a tax. A tax is based on the value of your property. A valid special assessment is based on the value of the benefit that you receive. And all single-family residents receive the same benefit. They get the same response call.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The vacant lot thing. We have an enormous quantity of vacant land within the city limits here. I have 2 vacant lots on 2 sides of it. So I have a real problem with someone saying the guys that own those 2 vacant lots next to me don't have to pay for fire protection when I do. Because it takes the same mobilization of a fire engine and 4 certified firefighters to come out and fight a fire on a vacant lot as it does my house. So we have huge tracts of land within the city limits. For instance, the Corey property, 88 acres. You're saying he gets away scot-free. St. Joe Company, Bonfire Beach, 550 acres, they get away scot-free. And all the other parcels of land, which is 1/3 to 1/2 of this town, and they don't have to pay for fire protection when those of us who have buildings. And then that brings to another thing. We have a lot of buildings that are on vacant lots that are illegal, and I'm talking about the sheds and the garages where there's no primary structure. So where do those buildings fall if they're not single-family homes or they're not commercial buildings? They get off scot-free. To me, this is extremely one-sided, and I have a real problem with this.
Hey, you're gonna hear lots of this.
That's fine. I have no problem with it.
Like I said, that just goes back to what I said about vacant land. That 88-acre plot, unless it's threatening the house, we're not pulling hose locks for that. That's not what we do in Florida. When it comes to the house, we'll do it, but other than that, we're waiting for forestry. If their land burns up, that's not our business in Florida, and we're structural protection, because we're not gonna buy a D6 Dozier to put out woods fires.
Yeah, but the point's well made by Lisa. You'll go next door to her house to put out a grass fire because her house is next
To
door.
protect her home.
It would be protect her home.
But you're doing the same thing as if it was a house fire, basically.
Well, it's not a full deployment. A grass fire is me with an extinguisher in an empty vacant lot next to the beach. A house fire is a company of 12.
That may be what you've seen. The last grass fire I saw was not too far away from Lisa. Actually, it was a woods fire, and we deployed. At that time, we had most of our fire people there and a truck.
And
I could
typically
see not
there's,
charging the full thing we would for a residence, but I do question maybe for our vacant lots within our city that are still vacant and sometimes grass or sometimes have never been cleared. That may be something.
I mean, if you guys wanted to charge vacant land, we could, typically in city situations, because when they do respond to a vacant lot next to a house, what benefit is that vacant lot? They don't care if it burns or not. It's the structures around it that do care. And I believe you didn't have that many in our call analysis when I get to it. You didn't have that many. I want to say there were 6 vacant land calls. There weren't a whole lot, and so we just excluded them
Of actual calls to put out a fire.
for vacant
Yeah,
lots.
but I think the potential is always there.
Right.
And a lot of our vacant lots have 80-foot trees on them. And if they catch on fire and fall over next door or across a house next door, in the past, have you been associated with a community that has included vacant lots?
Typically, in a city situation, they do not charge vacant land. We have a couple of our clients that do. They're more of the rural city situations where they're like more like 5-acre tracts and things like that. Typically, where we see more vacant land charged is in the county situation.
I can understand the reasoning for charging for vacant land. I don't think it should be the same, even halfway close to the same for a building or so. But in the city here, I can see 2 or 3 places just offhand here that if you got a rip-roaring fire going in the fall or the winter, there could be 2 or 3 houses in danger.
Right, and that would benefit the houses. It wouldn't benefit those properties. As a matter of fact, sometimes, depending on whether you're selling your timber or not, but sometimes if a fire comes in and clears their property, they don't have to pay for the property to be cleared. So
But I think what we're saying is that we're gonna respond.
exactly.
Be just like it were a house or whatever. Our manpower's gonna be there.
Correct.
And if they need to put water on it, they're gonna put water on it. They're gonna do everything they can do. So it's, while it's not a house there, then the procedures that you go through to get there will be very similar in what you do there.
Right.
And I can see a lot that hasn't been mowed, has overgrown and been there for 15 years
Okay.
with the trees and all, being even more of a serious situation than someone that's mowed their lot or cleared the lot. That might help people want to clear their lots a little bit better than they have in the past.
Well, so basically with that 6 land calls, that would be 2.4% of your calls. Very small amount of calls. When we get to it, I mean, if you guys want me to go back and look at developing a rate for our land, I have no problem with that. At this point, this presentation does not have the land charge in it. If it's your direction for us to develop a land charge, we can definitely do that.
I have just a question that you may cover, but when you say typically cities do not have land value charges, where do we fit into your,
Well, you have
category
more, you
of
have like
cities in
smaller,
terms of-
you're more of a not so
We
rural
don't have
city.
excess vacant land here, basically, is what.
my question is, in your
Like the city of
presentation,
Mascot
are we-
has a vacant
Are we
land.
on the lower end of the cities that you studied or helped with? Or are we on the upper end in terms of number of people, number of parcels?
Well, it would be the makeup of the parcels. Like you have a little small parcels and they're kind of together, the majority of them that you have some in the outskirts and stuff like that. So the structures are really close, and so the vacant land, if a fire breaks out on that vacant land, typically a property owner could let it burn because it's going to burn the land and make it probably like they do with agriculture.
Is there's strength in numbers, so the more people that participate, the more
Lower the cost.
It's-
more practical it is.
It's not common for cities to charge vacant land. I think we have one
understand.
or two.
Even our size.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially
That's all
your
I
size. Especially your size. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, yeah, I don't really care what they're doing somewhere else.
Right. Exactly. That's why I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the issues with us also, compared to a lot of cities our size, we have a tremendous percentage of our properties that are owned by people who are not here, not
Vacant
citizens.
residents.
Very, very much so. I think in most of the cities, some of the ones I've lived in, if my lot next door got on fire, certainly I'd pick up and call our fire department, but I'd also be out there with a hose trying to help it and so forth, as I think most of us would. We don't have that luxury here in most cases. For myself, I have a vacant lot across the street, vacant lot next to my house, vacant lot kind of behind. Structures around me, literally with exception of one, are all, next door to me are all vacant. They're owned by people outside of the city.
Now, vacant lot. I mean, it's not vacant houses.
Oh,
not
I
vacant
understand,
structures.
but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the risk is probably greater in a city like this that has vacant houses because the citizens won't be involved compared to most of the cities that you've dealt with.
Okay. I mean, I'd be happy to look at it. Like
We
I said.
understand.
Yeah,
This is our first shot out of the box, so we know
we're
a little-
discussing.
No, no
Right,
problem.
so let's try to let you get your presentation done, then we can,
Okay.
There are 2 or 3 cities within Bay County that have fire assessments, and it would only take me a few minutes to figure out the answer to how they treat this issue.
right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still based off the percentage, so when she says we ran 2.3%, remember how much is that gonna change the big picture here? Because we can't charge vacant land just because we wanna charge them more, right? It has
No,
to
no,
be
yeah,
based on
yeah, it has to
all
be
volume.
reasonable.
So when you look at 2.3% of our calls, what is it gonna change your residential rate, $1? And that's why we didn't add it in, is the benefit was almost not worth the time to put in.
So the government is telling us how we've got to do this.
No, no,
Case
no,
law.
no, no, no. Case law. Case law.
The court system, yes, sir.
Too many lawyers.
And they smile too much too.
All right,
Okay.
move ahead, move
Okay, we
ahead.
can get to the next one. Okay, so to develop your fire assessment, we look at 4 major components. We look at your service delivery, and like I said, you are right now predominantly volunteer, but you want to enhance those services to increase your ISO rating or to keep your ISO rating from going down. So we look at that. We look at your fire flow, based on your apparatus and the NFP, National Fire Protection Association standards. We look to see what is if a fully engulfed non-residential structure fire broke out, how much could your resources for your city put out? And based on the NFPA standards, you have the resources to put out 8,150 square feet. That's not saying that if a larger building catches on fire, you're gonna call in your mutual aid and all of that. So you're definitely gonna be able to respond to that and to put the fire out. But for developing a valid special assessment, we have to just look at what your resources are in your city. So based on your resources, you could put out a fire, fully engulfed, non-residential fire, up to 8,150 square feet. So therefore, what we've done is we've created a cap for all of the non-residential buildings, that any building that is over 8,150 square feet gets capped at 8,150 square feet. So, and that's reasonable. And then we look at the benefit area. We look to make sure that you service all of the parcels in your city, in the whole Mexico Beach Incorporated, and you do. So sometimes there may be something like an island that's part of your city that you don't have a boat to float over there to put the fire out. You don't have that situation, so that's good. So that's what we look at with your service delivery. Then we look at your fire department budget, and what we do is we develop a 5-year assessable budget to get an average rate. We look at your call data, your cost apportionment, and for yours, we looked at 1 year of call data, your calendar year 2016 call data. And we developed the historical demand, the proportionate amount. And then we looked at your parcel data. We looked at all the parcels and all the structures and all the land parcels in the city, and we looked at the number of billing units, the number of square footage for non-residential, the number of dwelling units for residential. And just so you understand, there are only 10 buildings in your city that cap out at that 8,150 square feet. So, and I think there are hotels, restaurants,
2 campgrounds.
a warehouse, and a supermarket, and a church. Okay, so then we develop your 5-year assessable budget, but basically what we did is we took your status quo budget and we developed it. Yours printed out, I'm so glad, because my printer, I've been having problems with it, and so the bottom line did not print out. So I'm good. No, I have it. I wrote it on here, but I'm glad you guys have already printed it. So basically, we took your status quo, and we started with that. And so we took your adopted fiscal year 17-18. Then we used a proposed to capture all of the issues that ISO has said that you need to resolve, to have more paid positions. This proposed budget is going to capture, so you have 3 paid people per shift, 6 new paid full-time firefighters, plus additional part-time, so that you will have 3 paid per shift, so you're only relying on 1 volunteer to show up to keep ISO happy, so you can keep your ISO, so you can keep your insurance rates down. We added some station repair. We also added bunker gear, because if you're going to have more staff going out there, they've got to have the bunker gear and the uniforms and stuff. We added an engine, because your engine, you need a new engine. So we added an engine. We did a debt service on the engine. We went out 10 years at 4.5%, and it's a $250,000 engine cost. They're very expensive. So we added all of your expenses. We subtracted your revenues, which you have a contract with Bay County to provide a certain area, and they pay $15,000 a year for that service. So we took your total expenditures minus your revenue to get your net expenditures. Then we also included your miscellaneous assessment expenditures, which includes the study cost, because you can pay yourself back for that, implementation cost. When you collect it on the tax bill, you have to send first-class notices out. And so there's a procedure and a process, so we put all those costs in there. Also, when you collect it on the tax bill, there's a statutory discount. The same discount that you get with your property taxes, you get with your non-ad valorem assessments. So if you pay in November, you get a 4% discount. If you pay in December, you get a 3%, and so forth. So what we did is we've added that to it, assuming everybody's going to pay in November. So we added that cost to it. The majority that have, you probably don't have a whole lot of homesteaded ones, but the majority that have homesteaded do pay in November. And then to collect it, the tax collector can charge you up to 2% for collecting it for you. So we added those, and the property appraiser can charge you too. So we added those costs. If they don't charge you, we can net them out and reduce the rates and everything. But for right now, we put them in there. So basically, your status quo budget is $247,080. That's not to add any of these additional enhancements to keep your ISO up. To keep your ISO up, The first year, it would be $917,738. That's what it is. So, but what we did is we took it out 5 years. We added a nominal like 3% to the salaries and expenditures. Health insurance goes up, workers' comp's insurance goes up. And then on the operational, we kept most of them kind of status, kind of flat. But we added a nominal 2% to some of them, and 1% to communications, to get a 5-year accessible budget. Because if you can develop a 5-year accessible budget, you're not fluctuating your rates. What we try to do is get an average rate. So the 5-year average accessible budget, because the first year you have a lot more expenses getting the program up and in place. So the 5-year average is $900,276. So basically, those are the figures that I'm going to be running the rate scenarios, because that's what everyone wants to know. What's it going to cost me? So if we look at the next one, this is your cost apportionment, and this is where I said we looked at your calls. We looked at the calls that you ran to residential and non-residential. Some of our other programs, we may have more categories, but you just don't have the different types of non-residential structures to develop those, because you just have mostly just all non-residential just kind of lumped all together. So that's what we felt was the fairest way for you right now. So based on our analysis of the 2016 call data, you ran 83.13% of your calls to residential, single family and multifamily, and 16.87% of your calls to non-residential. So based on this analysis, whatever budget you decide to fund, whether it's the $247,000 budget or the $900,000 budget, this is how those expenditures would be divided. The non-residential would be responsible for paying 16.87%, and the residential would be responsible for paying 83.13%. Now, like I said, if you decided that you wanted to look at what the land would pay, then it would take a sliver out of it, and it would be 2.4%. I'd have to go back. I believe it was 6 calls, and at 6 calls, it's 2.4%. It's a very nominal amount. So whatever budget it would be that 2.4%. But right now, the rates and scenarios that we have, I did not do it. I can get it for you, though.
Let me ask a question, since you have this up and it's based on 16, and you have a budget going forward several years down the line. Would the assessment be adjusted, say, 5 years from now if this figure was significantly different?
Correct. And what we do is we recommend that you update it every 3 to 5 years, or if something major happens. So like if for some reason, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you get an industrial park in here and they're running calls every week to this industrial park, that might create a separate industrial warehouse category, because they're putting a lot of demand on your fire department. And then, so it might shift the burden, it might shift, make different pieces of the pie. But for right now, and what we see, unless there's a big shift in the type of, like if you have a boom and you get a lot more multifamily or something like that, typically we see it stays fairly consistent. I mean, we've been doing the Broward County cities now since in the 90s, and we update them every 3 to 5 years, and they pretty much stay consistent, except for when the boom hit and a lot of the commercial businesses went out of business. Then we saw the spike in residential, and as the economy started coming back again, we started seeing it go back to where it normally was. So that's typically what you'll see, unless you get something going on in your city that changes the mix up. We typically see it's about the same.
Okay, thank you.
What happens if Farmdale over here suddenly starts building houses? Are we going to be responsible for their fire support?
So if it's outside of the county to cover it, it would be like that $15,000 the county pays us now. We actually come out pretty good on right now what the county pays us to cover. We cover a church and one piece of property for $15,000 a year. So we actually benefit more fire-wise than if it was in the city. So if Bay County wants us to cover unincorporated area, it's gonna cost them more money on their contract. They'll have to work that out with us. But as of right now, we haven't been asked to cover it, and we're not covering anything other. We cover those two properties, and that's where we get that $15,000 revenue from. So as of right now, we're making more money by covering unincorporated areas. It's better for the citizens of Mexico Beach versus the calls.
But if they're going to build 20 houses out there, then Bay County is expecting us to cover that, don't you guess?
They'll have to get a contract with us. if
You'd
they do, and then we
renegotiate the interlocal
renegotiate our
agreement.
amount.
But you couldn't charge them with your assessment because you only have jurisdiction in your city, so you couldn't charge them. But the fact that they're paying it on a contract basis, and so that's fair.
We've been
That's confusing.
Talking about categories, I think we're about to dive into rates. So I just want to make sure I understand something and everybody understands before we keep going. The residential category is really based on dwelling units. The non-residential category is based on square footage. We've got this dwelling unit question that comes up from time to time. For your modeling, how are you treating hotel units and condo units?
They're in the non-residential. Condos are multifamily.
Okay.
Residential condos are in the multifamily because it's a residential.
So
Whether
those
it's a
are-
single
those are
family or
residential
multifamily,
dwelling
they're
units.
residential dwelling units.
And then hotels are.
Hotel and motels, RV parks are captured in the non-residential. And that's, the RV parks is captured in the non-residential by statute. Okay. So this is the parcel apportionment, what we were talking about. So single family, multifamily, mobile homes, they're all in the residential and they get charged based on a per dwelling unit basis. The non-residential includes commercial, RV parks, industrial warehouse, and institutional. Institutional is things like churches, schools, not-for-profits, things like that. And they're all based on a per square foot basis, and it's capped at 8,150 square feet. Now, RV parks, the reason they're in, either you have to create a separate hotel motel category, and you charge by space or room, or you have to treat them similar by statute to hotel motel. Hotel motel we're charging as a non-residential on a per square foot basis. So what we do is we charge the RV parks based on the number of RV spaces that they have. And what we do is we assign square footage to each RV space based on an average mobile home, RV. The RV Park Association has said that the average RV is about 191 square feet. That's a very conservative, so what we do is we take 191 square feet times the number of RV spaces and we add that up. And we charge them based on that. Then if they have, RV parks, like I said, by statute have to be treated the same. And so what we have to do is for any mobile homes that are in an RV park, we also assign a square footage for each mobile home space. RV parks and mobile home parks are licensed through the Department of Health. And the reason for is because of the sanitation, because they need to make sure there's enough water and sewer facilities for the size of that park. The mobile home parks, if it's a mobile home park licensed as a mobile home park, we can treat that as residential and we charge them based on a per dwelling unit base for each mobile home space. But RV parks, because of the statute, have to be treated like a commercial hotel motel. So we have to assign square footage to them. We cannot charge them as a residential dwelling unit. So that's why we do it that way.
Hang on just a second. Yeah.
Query about what you're talking about, how you're charging and such with the individual to the multi. You mentioned that the condos that we have in town were being charged like for single family.
Per dwelling unit.
Okay, but do you have any idea what percentage of these condos are used really as rentals, which would be similar to like the governor units are being rented out? I would think, I don't have any idea if it anybody does, 90% of these units are rentals?
What we do,
Wild guess.
what we do is, we look at the property appraiser's data, and we go based on how the property appraiser classifies it, because that's the best data that we have.
Well, the property appraiser would not have any idea about the way he does it if the condos are being rented out, even though it's individual, so.
No, we don't look at
Do
that.
them a different way,
We don't look at
I
that.
mean, money-wise.
We don't look at that because when they go out to a call, they assign it to, they say, we went to a multifamily, or we went to a,
Well, if they
non-residential.
went- If he went to a call at a condo,
he would put it as a multifamily call. It would be a condo unit.
We don't know who owns it when we go to these calls, and the owner is still responsible for that fire assessment fee, so they're still paying their portion, even though they're renting it on their own. The owner's paying, not the renters, so.
So now we're gonna get into where everybody likes to see. They wanna know what's it gonna cost me. So what we do is we look at, now that we've got our analysis and our pieces and stuff, now it's a matter of math. So looking at the percentage, 83.13% goes to residential, 16.87% goes to non-residential. Funding that $900,276 budget, $748,422 would be paid through the residential, $151,854 would be paid by the non-residential. Then we look at how many residential dwelling units you have in the city, and you have 1,892 residential dwelling units. So you divide that into the $748,000 budget to get a $396 per dwelling unit rate. We do the same thing with the non-residential. We look, the $151,854 gets divided by the 272,553 square feet, and those are the capped square feet because you can't go over it, and that would be 56 cents a square foot for each non-residential. It's real easy to do comparisons with the residential. Every dwelling unit, every apartment door, it's real easy. But so that you can get a feel for, well, what are some of your non-residential, what is their actual cost? Well, the maximum at the $8,150 square foot would be paid $4,564 a year. Okay, and these are annual rates. You have an average size of 2,865 square foot commercial. That's the average size commercial building in your city. So they would be paying $1,604.40. And the average industrial warehouse size building in your city is 3,717 square feet, and they would pay $2,081.52. So this way you can get a feel for what some of the non-residential would be paying at that 56 cents a square foot.
Is the modeling based on heated and cooled, under roof?
Total building square footage.
That the property appraiser has, right?
Right, it's based off the property appraiser, or, I don't think we had to do any field observations, yeah. So if we go to the next one, what I've tried to do is, I've tried to give you some various scenarios so you can see what some of the different options are. So the status quo, funding that $247,000 budget. The residential would pay $109, and the non-residential would pay 16 cents a square foot. Now, of course, that's not going to accomplish your goals. That's not going to do anything with the ISO. It would just be funding. It's just so you can get a feel for what if you didn't do anything different and you wanted just to remove it from the general fund and have a different revenue stream, that would be what the rates would be. The second scenario is funding 83% of the $900,000 budget. And basically, what that would accomplish is you would have a dual funding stream. You would still fund $200,000 from the general fund, which is about what you fund right now, and then you would fund the additional enhanced services through a fire assessment. And that would be $329 for residential dwelling unit and 47 cents a square foot for non-residential. And then the maximum rates we just went over. Now, you can make the policy decision as to whether you want to exempt churches and not-for-profits and government. Churches and not-for-profits can go on the tax bill. It would be a policy decision as to whether you wanted to exempt them or not. You can charge them. I'm not sure that we would recommend it, but that would be your policy decision. Government parcels is another thing. They do not go on the tax bill. There is a little bit of a collection issue because you would have to send a separate bill. You couldn't lien their properties and things like that. So pretty much, if you wanted to try and charge them, you could send them a bill and see if they would pay or not. We probably recommend that you just go ahead and exempt them. But that again is your policy decision. I just wanted to let you know your options. But so that you would understand the impact if you decided to exempt both government and institutional tax exempt, I've provided you with the buy down at the $247,000 level. You would have to fund through the general fund $7,876. The 83% it would impact you about $23,000, and then the 100% it would impact you $27,566. So that gives you the full, so your net revenues are down there. And then I've also added so you could see where your average commercial, what they would be paying at each rate scenario, your average industrial warehouse, and what the maximum non-residential building would pay at the 8,150 square feet. This just gives you some options. Like I said, if you want me to look at the vacant land, I can do that. It would be funding around 2.4% of that budget. So it, like the chief said, it would maybe knock off $1 or $2 from the residential, and maybe a half a cent from the non-residential, even if that. So it wouldn't have a huge impact to the other rates. But so it would be totally up to you.
So we couldn't just apply a flat rate. It has to be by the 2.whatever%.
Yeah, it would have to be based on their demand, and their demand is very little at this point. So, and that might be because the Division of Forestry is the predominant one that gets called on major land fires and stuff. So then the schedule, the implementation schedule. Tonight is the workshop to kind of give you your options, let you know about the study and the analysis that we did. In December, in order to collect it on the tax bill, you have to adopt a resolution of intent, and that's pursuant to Florida statute, 197.3632. Says if a governmental entity wants to put something on the tax bill, they can, but they have to adopt a resolution of intent by January 1 of the year in which they want to put it on, the first year it goes on the tax bill. So you would have to adopt it by January 1 in order to put it on the November 2018 tax bill. I do believe in talking to staff that your needs are more urgent. So what this schedule is doing is saying you're going to impose it and you're going to send separate bills out the first year and then put the second year's on the November 2018 tax bill. That is totally your option. But in any way, in order to keep your options available to use the tax bill, the November 2018 tax bill, staff is going to come back to you on December 12th and ask that you adopt this resolution of intent. It's non-binding. If you don't decide to move forward with the fire assessment, you don't have to. It just keeps your options open. It keeps the door open for you to use the tax bill in November of 2018. It's not binding. It doesn't say you're going to move forward with the assessment. It doesn't say any rates. It just says, Mr. Tax Collector, please make space for us on your tax bill for 2018 in case we decide to move forward with this. That's all it is. And so there are strict publication requirements. It has to be published in the newspaper of general circulation once a week for the 4 weeks immediately preceding the public hearing. So to adopt it on December 12th, it would have to be published on November 16th, November 23rd, November 30th, and December 7th. And I think that staff has already initiated that process. If you pull the plug and tell them not to, I think they can pull it, but I think it keeps your options open. So that's what this schedule does. I was talking to your attorney earlier. You may have an ordinance, so you may not need to adopt another ordinance. We're going to look at that and see. So if that's the case, then we would take the ordinance requirements out there. But in order to try and get this funding revenue stream started this year and to send out separate bills in February that would be due the same time as the tax bills are due, March 31st, without the discount. This is what this schedule would be. So it would be, you would have your first reading of your ordinance the next December 12th, after you adopt your resolution of intent. Then you would have to advertise your ordinance 10 days before the ordinance gets, the public hearing on the ordinance. You would have your second reading and you would adopt your ordinance on January 9th. After your ordinance gets adopted and that funding mechanism, if you need it, if not, you don't have to do that, you would adopt what's called an initial assessment resolution. The ordinance is a procedural ordinance that says if you want to impose an assessment, these are the procedures that you have to go through. It doesn't necessarily say anything about the rates, it doesn't say anything about the categories, it doesn't say anything about any of that. The initial assessment resolution is actually the meat of the methodology. It explains the methodology, it explains the maximum rates, and it directs first class notices to be mailed out. Then the first class notices would be mailed out. They have to be mailed out 20 days prior to your public hearing. And what it does is it invites everybody to the public hearing, says, we are looking at imposing a fire assessment. We are looking at imposing these rates. And it tells every property owner specifically how they will be impacted. Your property has 2 dwelling units on it, therefore you will pay this much. Your property has 2 commercial buildings with this many square feet, therefore you will pay this much. And so everybody can see how it would specifically impact them. And then you would have your public hearing. And that public hearing under this schedule, and this is a pretty aggressive schedule, would be on February 13th. That would be where you would make your final decision. You could come down from the rates, but you couldn't go up. It's kind of like when you set your millage. You set your maximum millage rate, and you can come down, but you can't go back up until you go through the process again for the next year. So whatever you are potentially thinking about going to, the maximum is what you'd want to notice at. Then you would make that final decision after you open up the public hearing and hear what the public has to say. Then you would make your final decision. Then, like I said, then separate bills would be mailed out for the first year so that you could start getting this funding mechanism in place so that you could keep your ISO, because I think there's some time deadlines that you have to comply with certain things so that ISO doesn't hit you hard with your rating. Your insurance company is going to be pulling out and not writing any more homeowners insurance policies, and everybody's homeowners insurance is going to go way high. So then people would start paying. We would have the assessments due by the end of March. You probably will get about an 75 to 80% collection rate the first year sending out separate bills. When you put it on the tax bill, you'll probably get about a 98% because you also have that tax deed certificate sale. So whoever doesn't pay their taxes by and their assessments by the March 31st deadline, then the tax deed gets sold, and then you eventually get that money, and that's with your taxes and non-ad valorem assessments. Because when somebody pays their tax bill, they can't just go in there and say, I'm gonna pay the city taxes and the county taxes, I'm not paying the school board because I don't have anybody in school and I'm not paying this assessment. This is ridiculous, I'm not paying it. And then the tax collectors say, well, then don't pay anything because we're just gonna sell it all at a tax deed. You either pay it all or you don't pay any of it. So that's why the collection rate is so high. So any of the delinquents though that, so you'd send it out, you send out the separate bills, you'd start getting that funding mechanism so you could start hiring these people and showing ISO that you're doing the things that they told you needed to do. Then any of the delinquents, so if anybody didn't pay by the time you started the next year's process, we could roll those delinquents into the next year's tax bill. So it would be kind of a little, it would be an extra that you would collect. You might not collect it this year, but you would definitely collect it the next year with the tax bill at that 98%. So that's, and then, so policy direction. I guess staff is gonna need direction from you whether to proceed with implementation or not. I guess if we're gonna be coming back in January, I can get you those rates. If you wanna see some vacant land rates, I can get you that. And we can, and then they're gonna need some direction on what kind of maximum rates you would want in that initial assessment resolution, and the policy decision on what you would like. And this is, I mean, you could always change it at the, but this is so that your attorney can draft the appropriate resolutions and have it available for you. You can always change it by verbal motion and everything, but this is so they can have some direction on drafting the motions and stuff. So, and then any other issues that you may want to discuss.
Okay, explain quickly the week 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are newspaper ads,
Yes,
all of them?
all of them.
Okay.
That's already been set up, Mayor, with what we talked about before. This is just adopting the intent, even if we go away
It's
with it.
procedural.
So,
Okay.
that's already.
We have some clients that they do some neighborhood improvements and things like that, and they're not sure when a neighborhood's gonna come in and ask them. So they have a regular procedure that they just adopt one every year, to a blanket resolution of intent to cover any new programs that might come on.
Do those initial newspaper advertisements, what level of detail do they have on rates and applicability?
Oh, they have nothing. It just says, we're looking at doing this, and if we do, it'll go on the tax bill.
Okay.
Okay, we have a regular meeting in just a few minutes, so I want to try to, yeah, I saw a question, we'll go ahead and take, yeah.
Yes, sir, I just wanted to ask, sir, Bay County recently went to a 2 on their rating. What are we currently?
Bay County went to what?
I can answer that now.
Oh,
So Panama City went to a 2. Bay County's a 5 and a 9.
yeah, I was gonna think they were.
All right,
We're a
that
5
just-
currently.
What are we right here, and what would this assessment, if we implement it, take us to?
So we're a 5 right now. ISO's already said in September 11, 2018, we're going to a 10, which is the worst rating you can have. This would be our best attempt to keep our current rating. To go to a 2 would cost double what we have up here at least.
Yeah.
So the insurance change is insignificant from level 7 down through 1 from the meetings we've had with insurance reps. It doesn't change that much. ISO 1 is the best. A 7, there's not a huge, but where you see the biggest gap is the 10 to even a 9 is such a large gap, and that's where things start to become uninsurable. Because a 10 is essentially not having a fire department. Now, to be a city in Florida, you have to have a fire department. But in ISO's ratings, they're saying your fire department is so poor, we're gonna rate you as if you don't have one at all.
Yes, ma'am.
But if I understand what has been said, and I know that we're going to lose our fire thing with Tim, if we already have our liability and fire insurance with an insurance company, now we're going to have to pay approximately the average house $300 and some plus more to help fund our fire department. Is that what I'm hearing?
But when you go to renew your insurance, you're not gonna be able to renew it
Well,
at the same
I understand
rate.
that, I'm asking what is our future now? So So we all are gonna have to put, I think we said $330.
$400.
Almost
$400 more out. All right, is the city foreseeing any help with some of our lower income people who own homes here?
That-
Or I know they
Well,
don't.
let me make sure that, just briefly, we're hearing tonight what you're hearing for the first time.
That is something we would address.
So we have, I probably could make a list of 10 questions right now, but go
But
ahead.
that could be a
Right.
possibility.
It'd be like a water bill, you could apply for a reduced rate or a financial indemnity or whatever.
It would be called a hardship exemption, and what it would be saying is that because it's going on the tax bill, we realize there's some people that may own their house. It's a two-prong. You have to have, your house has to be homesteaded, and you have to be at a certain income level, or whatever. If you already got one for your water, you might as well piggyback off of that. So it basically says, if you can prove to us that you really can't afford this, we're not gonna sell a tax deed and take your house away from you.
Okay, and
And you can pay it on their
for
behalf.
my clarification, we can do all of these things and then choose not to do it
Correct.
at the end.
At the very final decision, you can do all the processes and everything, and then at the
Because
final
this
public
seems-
hearing, you can
this
say,
seems
I don't wanna go
For
forward.
me and our community to sell this is pretty aggressive schedule.
It's extremely aggressive schedule.
And I'm not comfortable with that.
And-
I personally am not comfortable
And
with that.
we can push it back. What we were trying to do is we were trying to get you some revenue in so that you can make these
And
improvements.
I understand that, but
Mhm.
I'm more comfortable with making sure that we're doing what our community wants us to.
Correct. Mhm.
That's much more of a priority to me, even though you can go through these steps and then come up to, if I'm reading this right, all the way to February 13th and say no.
Correct.
I'm not for doing this until we hold at least a couple public meetings and say, hey, folks, here's the bottom line. What's your thoughts?
Well, let me explain to you our experience. You can tell people that we're gonna impose this fire assessment, and you can say what the rates are gonna be, and people will be all for it until they get that piece of paper in front of them that says, woo, this is gonna impact me how much? And so what I would recommend, if you wanna hold some public workshop meetings, that maybe you even send the notices out 30 days. Send the notices out and schedule some public workshops in between. So we would send the notices out into January, and maybe schedule the final public hearing in March. And put some public workshops in an informational insert. This is why we're going to be doing this. This is the need of, this is how you're going to benefit from it. And here's some public workshops that we're going to have before we make our final decision, because we want to hear from you. Once they see how it's going to personally impact them, you will get more participation at the public workshops, in our experience, than if you just start doing the public workshops now before people know how it's truly going to impact them.
I don't know, I think it's important to know how it will impact.
And so they won't know until those first class notices go out.
And I asked for the aggressive schedule because, as you guys discussed early on, you didn't want us to go to a 10. My last reporting to ISO was in June. If I do not show them progress by June, when I report to them, as in paid guys, we're going to a 10, September 11, 2018. Now, that doesn't mean we can't fix it later, but we'll be at their dime on when they come back to reassess this. So if they say, okay, well, you fixed it, well, we'll reassess you in a year. Well, that means we're going to stay in ISO of a 10 until they choose. So this aggressive schedule was I asked for, because as we spoke early on, the idea was to try to fix it before we went to a 10 and not fix it afterwards. So I asked for the aggressive scheduling because that June deadline is the last time I report to them, and if I don't show improvement, we have to wait for a reassessment by then.
Well, it's never going to look good if we show a 10 from the insurance companies. I don't, some of them may say, well, let's see what kind of history you have the next few years. But, and as you explained to me, most of the companies are not going to insure us if we're a 10.
Well, I think if I interpret part of what you're saying is correct too, if we wait until we go to 10, our insurance prices will go up, and I'm not sure I trust the insurance companies to pull it back down where we are, say now, if we go back to a 5.
We
The
don't,
rep we met with told us this. Now, this is just an insurance rep. We cannot get for sure numbers. People have told me they got for sure numbers. I asked them to present them to me. They did not yet.
They
No one's given them to me yet because I've asked for them. What he told me is we have 8 insurance companies he uses right now. He asked them, this is the guy who does our health insurance. He said he'd come talk to us. He said if we go to a 10, 6 are pulling out. So your option would probably be, he said those 6 would come back in when we fix it. But if you're one of those 2 that stayed, you may have to look at getting a different insurance company, because like you said, I've never heard of insurance companies dropping the rate down once they go up, and that is a concern.
Well, and if we end up with a 10, it's not just going to affect the homeowners paying the bill, it's going to affect everything in town, the real estate. Who would want to purchase a house with a 10 rating?
Let's
And
go.
it's going to be a domino effect.
Absolutely.
And it affects our business people too, who are going to be
So-
paying big bills compared to
Right.
we little homeowners.
So if we do the ads
Right.
and we do the adopt the resolution of
10.
intent,
Mm-hmm.
prior to the 12th, will we be able to know what people?
No, no, well, see, that's just to keep your options for the tax bill. That's the only thing that you're doing there. And if you have that ordinance, if that ordinance that you already have in place, then you won't have to do a first reading of an ordinance and all. So I think that's gonna take out the first reading, the advertisement, and the second reading of the ordinance.
When will Ms. Smith know how much she owes?
Well, you would have to adopt the initial assessment resolution. Right now, it's scheduled for January 9th. So you would adopt the initial assessment resolution, and then you would mail out first-class notices. You could mail them out a week from then.
See, that doesn't give us, but then February 13th.
Well, what I'm saying is so if you mailed them out the 23rd, you could mail them out early. The statutory requirements say they have to be mailed out 20 days before the public hearing. So to give everybody proper notice, okay? But you can mail them out 30 days before the public hearing. So what you could do is you could mail them out January 23rd, and then you could have your public hearing either on February 27th, or you can have it on March 13th. You could push it out like, say, and
Okay, I see.
in the notice you could say, and we want to hear what you have to say. So we're going to have these community workshop meetings to discuss it before, so we can hear your input even before we come back on the 13th of March or February 27th. So you mail them out 30 days in advance or
Gotcha.
40 days in advance, and schedule those public workshops, so you can get your input and know where you're going with it.
December 12th is our only firm deadline. We have to have that
Right.
by the end of the year.
Question, can we not do it really much like the tax people do for the county? Say, for instance, we adopted, okay, we think we're going to charge $400, I'll use a rounded off figure. The council feels that that's good on December the 12th. Could we not send out a notice saying, as the tax people do, hey, this isn't the exact amount yet, but this is what we anticipate it's going to be?
That's an even
The
more
20.
aggressive schedule.
But I'm saying that gets it out to the people so that for what Al's talking about, we can actually have a meeting prior to January or around the same time as January 9th instead of waiting, get it out to the public, because we're saying, hey, this isn't really, because we haven't blessed it completely, like, again, the county tax
Well,
people do.
I would suggest that we can say that these are the maximum rates at this point. But until you actually adopt your initial rates, so if
Understood.
you want to, you'd have to ask your attorney. First of all, we'd have to see if that ordinance is going to suffice. And if the ordinance suffices, if he wants to write the initial, that's even making it a more aggressive schedule.
Oh, I understand, but that's only aggressive from the standpoint to allow us to start having meetings with our citizens. It's not necessary, we're not trying to push the date, the March 31st date, or what I'm talking about.
You don't want to mail your notices to the public 3 months before you're going to make that final decision for the first class notices. That's a little bit out there. you may want to, I mean, you can send out like but not, I mean, it's going to cost you for mailing those notices.
I understand.
But I mean, you can start like putting it on your website. You can start putting flyers out that these are the rates that we're looking at doing, and things like that. But once the first class notices, I think the statutory requirements is 20 days prior to
Not
it.
talking really about a
But
first class notice.
I think 3 months is for that statutory requirement is kind of a long period. I would defer to your attorney on that one.
You can always provide more notice. You'd want to draft it so that you weren't accidentally substituting it for the notice that you're
No,
talking
yeah, that's
about.
what I'm saying, is
Right.
information notice, you know.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, I get it.
Similar to what, again, the county does when we start coming into our tax
I totally
programs.
understand. You want people to understand the purpose for this, the
Right,
insurance implications.
which would give us
Not
then a
just
little
big
leg
revenue
up
bill, you've got a
of meeting
direct
with our
issue your
public.
insurance going on.
The rates, but it wouldn't necessarily tell each individual property owner how
No.
they were going to be impacted. Yeah, absolutely.
June 1st, you mentioned that a while ago.
I said June, it's not June 1st, but in June, I don't have the exact date in front of me. And sometime in June is the last chance I have to report before showing progress. And so, I mean, that's part of when we got that 10-day letter and we talked about my response was saying, that, okay, we're trying to fix it and this is this is your one chance kind of thing. And I know I'm coming in behind the curve, but I wasn't here a year or 6 months ago when they came in. So all I can do is hit this aggressively to try to fix it because I wasn't here when they came in and did the audit. And I came in behind the audit. So I realize I'm coming at you with an aggressive schedule, but I'm trying to fix it on the front end, so.
Well, I'm looking at $400 versus if we go to a 10, I'm probably looking at $1,500 to $2,000.
That's my fear, yes, sir.
So people need to understand that difference. I'd much rather pay $400 and keep it here in town.
But in light of the schedule that we're on, I'm not comfortable continuing to delay our regular meeting past much longer than advertised. Is the council's, is everyone comfortable? I'm not comfortable, but I may be the only one are you looking tonight, am I reading policy direction? Are you wanting,
You could probably give
What
it
is
to
the-
them
what
on,
is-
you
what are
could
you
probably,
looking-
you could probably mull it over and give it to them on the 12th or something like. Your attorney's just gonna need to know, we're gonna need to know what schedule you wanna follow, so that you can get the appropriate documents to adopt.
tonight?
Oh, well,
I don't-
or you can come back and
Do we
say the
have
12th, I
another
mean, that's
workshop?
gonna be y'all's. I don't think you need to do it tonight, but
Okay, well,
at
I'm just
some
trying to
point,
read, I want to make sure that I'm more comfortable.
maybe coming
having-
back and making another decision on the
Yes.
12th, that's
Yeah,
fine.
or even another workshop where we
Right.
sit down and make sure
Sure.
that I'm, or we are, and they are, and everybody is, sort of get a feel for what we're doing. I think more public participation than just tonight,
Okay.
I would like to do that.
And
Could we
since you're
arrange
gonna be
another,
kind of-
just nothing but this on a workshop, advertise it for?
Yeah, why not?
pick a-
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Is that-
but the newspapers advertising will
That's what it
started.
proceed.
Yes, December 12th is just procedural, it's still going to happen.
Yeah, right, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
But well, why don't we do that while we're all here? Let's just pick another,
Do you want to do it that day, on the 12th?
No,
Before
it's
that?
another meeting that day. We don't want to do a
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
well, let's pick about a 5 o'clock on I don't know, what is the 12th? What day?
It's the regular meeting day.
Okay, so that's a Tuesday?
We need to do it.
So that's
But I
a morning meeting?
That's 6 PM again.
I don't think you need a morning meeting.
No,
We
I don't
need,
wanna
we
do a
need an
morning.
evening meeting, and it needs to be at 6 o'clock instead of 5.
So what's on the
Give
Monday?
people
night?
time to get here
Yeah,
from
well,
work.
Do we
Yeah,
have
the Monday
planning
prior
and-
to that.
Do we have planning and zoning on the 11th?
Monday the 11th
Yeah,
is nothing.
okay. How about let's do it then?
That's good.
Sounds good.
Is that okay with you,
Good?
Rick?
Yep.
6 o'clock on the 11th.
Do you need me here?
Is-
I'm
Wake
available.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that we can get on the, I guess it'd be next water bill, just a brief, something that says, hey, look on the website, so that anyone out of town can see
And
this
we're gonna do
information?
basically what we've done tonight.
Right, we're gonna talk.
I mean, I'm talking
Do you
about
want
just,
me to look at land at the 2.4%?
well, if you're talking, at the percentage you're talking.
It's very small, I
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
It was de minimis.
No.
No, I wouldn't
Okay.
fool with it.
All right.
we would need.
All right, thank you for coming,
Thank you.
and we
5
will.
o'clock on the 11th of December.
6
November
o'clock.
6th.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
One-
On the 11th, Monday, the 11th.
The 4 weeks of advertising, that's going to proceed, that needs to be done this calendar
They're still
year?
doing the 12th for that.
Okay.
This is just gonna be a separate workshop on a separate day, that they wanna go through this again to get the public.
All right, we will close this meeting, have a motion to adjourn this special meeting.
Second, 16th.
Second, all right.